Okay, so this video covers the creation of the main gun for the Nashorn tank destroyer. And you're going to need a piece of bamboo skewer, and you want to make sure the grain is straight, and you want to make sure it's pretty round. And I would recommend against using heartwood because it's easy to carve, but it also not very strong for such a long gun. And also, it's hard to carve evenly because of the lack of actual grains. So if you can choose something a little bit closer to the edge, you'd be better off. And I recommend like starting out by sanding the entire length of the area you're going to need anyways down a bit. And if you need to, flatten the end and sand that down as well. You have a nice flat front. Now this is 320 grit sandpaper, I believe. Yes. Obviously for this you could use a little bit more aggressive sandpaper, but it's good enough. And it's nice to use something like this, or a little bit more aggressive, for the finishing at the end. Once you have it nicely smoothed out, you want to mark each size change. Like take the template part and just lay the skewer beside it like so, and just quickly mark each place on the template that there's a size change. And you can also mark about halfway down this blue box, like around here. That's the total length of the skewer. Now, you don't really need that mark right now, but it is kind of nice to have. So next thing I do is sort of extend each end of these marks I've made around the skewer. And the reason I do it this way is it's easy to kind of spiral if you just go one direction. And trying to meet these up evenly is not always easy. And so this just makes it so hopefully after I do this, when I flip it over on the other side, I'll be able to see both ends and kind of meet them up without too much spiraling, which just helps you get an even mark or carve to the gun. Okay, so now I'm going to take a utility knife and I'm going to score each of these spots where there's a size change, except this last one. You don't have to score here. So I would recommend, you don't cut the piece off the skewer, but I would recommend fairly deep scoring. We want to spin it around a couple of times under the blade. You can always score it a little bit more later. Okay. And so, like, especially with this piece here, I really recommend being careful on both ends. And you can't see me doing this, but each time I carve a little bit of the skewer, I'm spinning the gun. And you want to be really careful when you're butting any piece, really, but especially this piece, because it is easy to shear off because it's so small and delicate. So just trying to make an even taper. And I would use the guide as a guide only. If I get a shape you're happy with that sort of looks like the gun, and I would leave it. you're going to finish this all with sandpaper anyways, so you don't have to be perfect at this step. But just taper that into there. Now, when I do this part here, there's very little taper to this section. There's a tiny bit, but it's pretty much unnoticeable. So I'm going to back cut here to this piece really, really carefully. And again, I'm spinning the skewer each time to try to make the carving fairly even on each end. Get close to the size I want there. And I'm going to do the same on this end. You can be a little bit more aggressive up against this one, but try not to get too crazy. And then once you've got those tapered, it's really easy to kind of bridge the area between them without too much risk. But I would put your finger behind to support it, because otherwise sometimes it'll snap right there. Really don't want that. So again, try to be really careful, because if you're trying to be too aggressive, you can go flying with your blade and either cut yourself or ruin your piece. And after doing so much work, rather not ruin my piece or cut myself. You can see how it having the grain really helps you to keep each of these carves a lot closer to straight than if you had an uneven grain. Like I bought some non-bamboo, I guess they were wooden dowels or something like that, and I tried to carve a thicker gun from those, but it really did not work well because the grain was all over the place. Bamboo is pretty much the only wood material that I've found with perfect straight grain like this, which is nice to work with. So you can, like I said, you don't have to get it perfect. You can finish it at the end with sandpaper. Another trick, if you want to sort of even it out, it doesn't do your blade any good, but it does kind of smooth out some of the ridges quite easily by just using your blade at a 90-degree angle to the piece. You can see it's sort of like sanding, actually, except you can see what you're doing a little bit easier. And it's easier to hit specific areas that need to be adjusted. Okay, I'm pretty close to here at the size. Now with this, I'm just going to taper it back from this size, from the full skewer size, to the size that I've carved this section to, anyways, like it shows on the template. So I'll start pretty close and kind of work my way up. I mean, I start closer to this area, and then I kind of work my way toward where the taper begins, or I'm not sure if that's where it begins or ends, technically. The other end. It both begins and ends there. That's what I'm going to say. Anyway, so yeah, match that up, so it pretty much just looks like it smoothly goes into that size. And then with this last piece, I wouldn't try to come from up here. You'll end up taking off way too much quite often. It's actually much more difficult to carve it that way. Start about halfway down the muzzle tip and just taper it in. It's going to create like a horn look. And then once you've got it pretty evenly all the way around, just flip your blade along and take it straight down to even. Use sandpaper again. Now I've cut a little section of sandpaper. I make a little pocket of it, and then I just spin the areas in question under the sandpaper to smooth it out. You can do that for all of these pieces. Just be really careful when you're doing this piece to keep the tapered angle. So it'll be a little bit more difficult to do this tapered bit at the end. And then once you're satisfied this is all nicely sanded, I'm not going to show the whole process. It's long and I think you get the idea. Take a drill bit and you just want to create like a concave section right at the end of the gun. Just makes it, try to be really careful to get it into the center. I don't know why I end up whispering whenever I'm doing these delicate operations, but get into the center. You don't have to go very deep, especially if you're getting in danger of like stripping down the sides of the end of the gun there. Don't go too deep at all. Just try to create a little pocket for black paint. Makes the gun look really cool when you paint it. And that gets you the main gun. You can cut it off here if you like now. That'll be plenty of length. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And sign up for our website and see you soon. Thanks for watching.